Warriors, what's going on? It's Guru Joe, and got a little different vantage point than normal. I'm here at the academy. I'm waiting on a private lesson, and thought I would talk to you all and deliver another Warriors code. But first, take a look at this photo, man. This is kind of an important piece to me. It is a original movie poster from Game of Death. Back in the day, circa 1997. I used to work at a video store where you would walk up and hand somebody a little round tag, and they would go back to this library of these black cases, and they would bring you the movie you were going to watch that night on a giant rectangular cassette tape known as VHS, for all of you too young to remember that. It's kind of interesting how time flies, but I held on to it. I like Bruce Lee. I like those movies. I was able to get a copy of Enter the Dragon by working at that video store, along with a litany of movies. I made a lot of lifelong friends that I still talk to from those days. It was a really special time in my life. But coincidences happen, and you might notice, I don't know if you can see it with the glare, but it says, "To Joe, God bless," Dan and Asano on it. And Guru Dan, I had him sign it years later, but I got the poster well before I met him. I started training with Guru. I think my first seminar with him was in the year 2000. There's some pictures of that seminar up and around the academy. I had been doing some Kali before that in the 80s. In 89, I started under somebody who was kind of in the circumference adjacent to the organization, but it's interesting how those coincidences come together. And one thing about Guru and Asano that I've always appreciated is he'll always speak his mind. He's demonstrated a lot of courage, and sometimes it's subtle. You can tell he's making a point, but he's being very tactful with it. I'm going to try to do the same, but I am nowhere near as tactful as Guru Dan and Asano. So you may have noticed some things in the news this week. And unfortunately, we got to talk about those things. I'd much rather talk about character traits and just being a good human being. And hopefully this will turn into that as well. So this week started with some tragedy. There was yet again another mass shooting at a school at the start of the school year that you probably didn't even hear about. And that's because a podcaster by the name of Charlie Kirk was tragically gunned down and murdered on the same day, within hours of that school shooting happening. And that's kind of all that has been in the news. And I was aware who Charlie Kirk was before this happened. And make no mistake, and like every person in leadership that I have seen has condemned the shooter for their violent and unacceptable actions. Here at the academy, we preach self-defense all the time. Well, what happened to Mr. Kirk was not in self-defense, but it was cold stone murder, and it's unacceptable in a democratic society. It's not how we solve our problems. But it was a tragedy, and unfortunately, there's people that want to use this tragedy to suppress the very thing that Charlie Kirk most often talked about, and that was free speech. I disagree with a lot of what Kirk said, and then I feel like I'm a person of nuance, and I hope you are too. Often we feel the need to pick sides, to have teams, and I think that's by design. Like, who benefits from us being so divided over issues that are really just common sense? Like free speech. We should all be able to agree that free speech, even if it is hate speech, it is covered by the First Amendment. And that's where I feel like Charlie Kirk rested. Going back to nuance, I saw him deliver speeches that were almost eloquent. He did a good job at bringing out young men to college campuses, and that's a fair assessment to make. Whether you like or dislike the guy, he was actively engaged, and he brought crowds of people to hear what he had to say. And no one punished him for what he had to say. Now, I have heard him say things like, we need a less racially divided America, that we need a society that is more racially blind. That's a direct quote from him. But then I also heard him say that some black women don't have the processing power for clear thought. I heard him say that certain LGBTQ people should be stoned to death. I heard him call for the execution of Joe Biden. I heard him say that Ketanji Brown Jackson and Jasmine Crockett, the senator from Texas, or House representative, that they were not only a DEI hire, but that they took the seat and job of a white person. Now, to me, that seems profoundly racist. But he had the free speech and the right to say those things, even if I disagree with him. And Joe Biden did not lever the power of the state to go after Kirk and shut him up. He didn't ban him from college campuses. He didn't say to the universities that he was touring that, hey, if you have this person here, we're going to cut all government funding, because it just frankly would have been unacceptable to do that. But yet, that is exactly what we see happening right now, right? Weeks ago, you might remember that Stephen Colbert lost his job for hurting the president's feelings. So I think his network was Paramount, right? They cut him under the guise that, oh, he just wasn't performing at the ratings we wanted. And, it had nothing to do with that. But his ratings were among the best of all late night hosts, right? And then immediately Netflix picks him up and he's got another job. Then we move on to this situation. And you have Pam Bondi out here saying they're going to confront and they're going to attack hate speech. Okay, well, what is that? Well, yesterday we saw Jimmy Kimmel get fired for, again, not even saying anything about Mr. Kirk. He didn't mention Charlie Kirk in his monologue at all. All he mentioned was that people on the right-wing side that are MAGA are trying to inflame the issue to suppress speech, and they don't want to acknowledge that the shooter was likely a right-wing MAGA individual who followed Nick Fuentes based on all the evidence that we have to see right now. And it's just like whenever these tragedies happen, like where was this outrage when Congresswoman Hortman was gunned down in Minneapolis, in Minnesota, right? Her and her husband, even her dog was shot, and then the guy had a hit list. The guy is a devout evangelical. He's kind of paramilitary. He's running two securities. One of them is called the Praetorian Guard, and the other is, what's it called? The Red Lions. I mean, you can surmise for yourself if those sound very leftist or liberal, but honestly, it doesn't really matter. It's just sort of acknowledging the truth of the situation of what happened. And then if we cannot get stuck on that, but continue to move through this topic here of free speech, where is Jimmy Kimmel's free speech? You're not allowed to say a couple sentences. That's just deemed inappropriate because somebody said so. And it's not just, you could say, oh, it's ABC, CBS. They just fired him. Disney fired him just because they believed it was an inappropriate comment. But that's not true. The same day, the chair of the FCC threatened CBS's broadcasting license on the podcaster show Benny Johnson. And Benny Johnson is known to have taken Russian funding back when all that happened. So it's kind of considered the source, but that is direct pressure from the state. So yes, there is accountable actions for free speech. Like, I can't say whatever I want. Like, you can levy consequences on me for my free speech, right? You can choose to turn this channel off. You can choose not to come in and take lessons here. You can choose to say something bad, poorly in the comment sections that you disagree with me, and that is all okay. And those are the consequences for my free speech. If I had a job, I'd like to think I couldn't be fired for what I'm saying right now, but luckily I'm the boss, so you're not going to be able to fire me. And I think right now is a time for courage. And yeah, even me showing up here and doing this takes a little bit of courage to come out here and say this. But if I don't do it, if other people don't do it, then who will? Right? So Jimmy Kimmel is fired as a direct result of pressure from our government, from our state. Who else does that? North Korea, China, Russia. Is that the America that you want to live in? You know, and Disney's used to this. People are up in arms. Oh, Disney cave. Disney capitulates all the time. When they're serving content in India and China disagrees with that content, what do? They pull the scenes out of the movie or the whatever the picture is. They make a whole new scene just for China. And the thing is, the distinction here, it is not for the sake of the people or the audience. It is not the audience that are consuming the content. It is not a response to their complaints why these changes are being made. It is because of authoritarian actions from the state limiting speech and free expression. And this is important because, yes, it's silly. It's kind of mundane almost, right? Oh, just another comedian on a network. But it is a very slippery slope. And we all need to band together and we need to say that we are not going to tolerate this, that we need to say there is nuance in the world, that as much as I disagreed with Charlie Kirk and his opinions, he did not deserve to be gunned down. And as much as I can talk about that with empathy and surmise a tragedy that is horrific and honestly all too common in this country, especially right now, I can also disagree with his politics. I can disagree with his viewpoints. I can disagree with things that he said, because surely if I were to have debated Charlie Kirk, he would disagree with me. And that is what makes society, it's a big foundation of what makes society civil. You know, my friends know that you can talk to me and we can have a disagreement. But I'm also going to state what I feel is right and true and correct. And at some point, we might not be able to reach enough common ground. And I might have to say, well, yeah, I understand that you say that, but I might just disagree with you. And that should be okay. Because what's next? Is SNL in trouble? Is Saturday Night Live, do they need to trim their scripts and rewrite their whole show now because they have to walk on eggshells about what they say or don't say because it might hurt the president's feelings? Right? What about movies? Are movies going to change? You know, in fact, this morning I saw news that Indiana Jones, the video game, there was a trailer, and I can't remember. I think it's Bethesda is the developer who made this recent Indiana Jones game. If you haven't played it, it's fantastic. It's just like playing a sequel to one of the movies. In the trailer, just the preview for the show, for the game, Indiana Jones is filmed punching some guy and calling him a fascist. That's it. That's it. But some people on the right complained that was coded, that was inflammatory towards Charlie Kirk. Are you calling Charlie Kirk a fascist? One, because that's kind of entertaining, but they pulled the commercial down, and they're going to change it just because of that. And so we see news corporations also changing their speech to be safe. But we know through history, now is not the time to appease any authoritarian creep that marches forward. You can't ever appease fascism. And I'll say this, if you don't feel like calling it fascism, because that is directly what it is, you can't appease narcissists. You know, I have some family members who definitely qualify for that label. And it's the same thing. You know, you appease a narcissist, you give them an inch, and all they do is they come back for another bite. And I'll leave you with this. That is exactly what happened, right? They fired Kimmel. Trump celebrated it and said, now we need to go after Seth Meyers. So who's next? You know, we're awfully, awfully close to living that German poem, right? First they came for the Jews and I didn't speak out because I was not Jewish. Then they came for so-and-so and I didn't speak out, right? We can make it more modern. They came for LGBTQ and I didn't speak out because I'm not gay, right? And then they came for people of color who were migrants who travel here to work hard and live a better life, and I didn't speak out because I'm not a person of color or I'm no longer a migrant, right? Well, now they're coming for the comedians, and they can seemingly, it's for anybody of any stripe now. So when are we going to speak out? And your voice matters. Your voice matters even if it's as small as mine. It has an impact and a ripple effect, even though sometimes you don't see the results. So when you're talking to friends and family, do it in a friendly way. Always do it in a conversational way, never a combative way. One of the things I like to do is when I'm in a tough conversation with someone, because often it's very apparent you won't win anybody over. Like if I'm talking to somebody who disagrees with me right now and I say, Charlie Kirk was a fascist, they're going to shut down immediately because that word is going to trigger them. But if you say, what do you feel about the government coming in and saying that a comedian on late night TV is no longer allowed to say what they want to say? Doesn't that make you consider the First Amendment? Doesn't it make your wheels turn a little bit? What do you think is right here? And you'll be surprised. People will open up and they will arrive to a clear understanding because it's like kids. Sometimes you can tell them, hey, don't touch the hot stove. I'm speaking from personal experience. Dad sure told me, don't touch that inflamed burner. It's hot. Oh man, I don't know. Yeah, it feels kind of hot. How hot is it? I had to touch it to learn. When you learn something through self-discovery of your own volition, it is always a stronger experience than if somebody gave it to you and you just went, oh, okay, I agree, cool, yeah, I remember that. Kind of like sometimes you cram for the test, you pour all these facts into your brain, get through the test, and they're kind of gone. They were just something you kind of memorized for an exam, but they weren't deeply important to you, and you didn't really arrive to them, so you don't form the same neural pathways. So if you can get people to kind of arrive in those conversations through questions, through friendly banter and discussion, you disarm people. You let them know that, hey, like, yeah, I might disagree with you, but I still see you. We're still human beings. We're still friends. We're still community that is in this together. No matter how appalling I think this viewpoint might be, definitely don't say that. You just and then sort of solicit them with queries. I've done that with a number of topics, and then I'll leave you with this. But like back to DEI. DEI is a slur, right? It's a slur. Oh, it means people are unqualified. Does it? Tell me which part of diversity, equity, and inclusion you have a problem with. What part of inclusion? Should I not include everyone here at the Academy? Do you not like diversity? I certainly do. I like a diversity of thoughts. I like a diversity of food. I like a diversity of martial arts. Mixed martial arts doesn't really come about unless we're allowed to combine and mix things. It's in the name, right? I like a diversity of art. I like a diversity of cultures. I like traveling the world, and everybody enjoys coffee. Everybody enjoys coffee in a little bit different ways, and I find that variety interesting. I don't want everything totally homogenized down to just we can only have one point of view, and that's the only thing that's allowed. And that was supposed to be the beauty of the First Amendment, that we are all free to uniquely express the ideas that are our own and to have self-expression without the fear of somebody coming along and punishing for us, and specifically without the fear of having the state come down on us, the government, our own nation, right? One last piece of news that happened this week is Marco Rubio suggested to put in legislation that if they don't like your political ideas from your social media feed, or they find something out about you they disagree with, they wanted to take your passport, take your ability to fairly and freely travel, which I am also certain is in the Constitution. So hopefully we can get back to a rule of law. Hopefully we can get back to a dialogue where we can talk to one another. But I understand it's difficult. You know, when my dialogue is, hey, I want healthcare, I want education for everybody, I want a pathway for citizenship. You can disagree with me on that from a policy standpoint. Oh, education should be done this way. We should have a voucher system. Well, I disagree. I think vouchers lead to scams and the profitization of the school system when it should be a public good. And historically, when things are privatized, they don't tend to serve the public good as freely or as capably or as often. We can disagree. That's totally fine. But if you suggest people should be locked up in internment camps for overstaying their visa, that's a much bigger disagreement. If you frankly say LGBTQ people, trans people shouldn't exist, I think that's an attack on their personhood. And that, to me, is the paradox of intolerance. That is something that I just frankly, I can never come into alignment with, right? If you think somebody should be judged based on the color of their skin tone, we're never going to be in agreement, right? If you think people shouldn't be able to marry who they want to love and marry and the state should affect that, I'm never going to come into an agreement with you. And some of those we can have a dialogue about, but some of it can be very destructive and harmful to people that I love and care about in my life, and I will defend that. But you have a right to speak those things, speak them into existence, and as abhorrent as I think it is, I don't think the state should come down on people who express those ideas. So hopefully we're all in alignment. I hope that every American, let's throw out the sports teams for a minute. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on. It doesn't matter who you voted for. Nothing matters, but we should all appreciate the First Amendment, and we should all consider this as frankly kind of alarming. The important thing right now, besides speaking your mind and using your voice and having a little courage, is to find places of community. I've said this before on, I think, another one I called The Third Place. You really need to immerse yourselves in any kind of community activity, book clubs, martial arts, start hanging out at your local library, trivia clubs, just anything with groups of people. We need to touch grass. We need to find mindsets, diverse groups of populations that we can start experiencing and becoming a part of. I just traveled recently, and one of the things I love about travel is it exposes you to the real world. I was in the middle of Germany, all over Germany actually, from the southern region, Frankfurt, down to the Black Forest, and then back up to Munich, and then a little bit of wine country, smaller towns like Fusen and Baden-Baden. And there's diversity everywhere. They want to make you think, and this is a topic for a whole nother video. That's the thing, though, with curtailing speech. They want to be able to just make everyone think a certain way. And it is counter to reality. I don't think many of you, do you really have family members you can't even have a conversation where you disagree with them? At Thanksgiving, I can disagree with my uncle. I can disagree with my dad. We still enjoy the meal together. Nobody's shouting. I'm just like, hey, we're going to have to pay the tariffs. That was last year's conversation. And they were like, no, the other country paid. Whatever, it's a disagreement. But everybody should be free to express that, because without that, we're not going to have a very good barometer for truth. Look at how they use speech in North Korea, China, Russia, Hungary, Argentina, right? The state controls the media, or the oligarchs of the state, like in Russia's case, like look at RT Media. It spouts a line that's an agenda. They don't have free speech. They couldn't call Putin out and say, hey, what he's doing is wrong in Ukraine. Hey, what he's doing has cost us over 1 million Russian lives. Not total in the war, Russians. But the people don't acknowledge that because they're told an opposing truth. And right now, in this time and place, truth is more important than ever, right? Because the propaganda is so good. They're like, oh, well, we need to denazify Ukraine. They just begin to toe the party line. And it's honestly, it is not their fault. It is because that is the only narrative that is permitted and allowed. And we are getting closer and closer to that. You know, I know this video got longer than I expected, but if you're still watching, I appreciate you for enjoying the content. And I promise I am going to wrap it up in just a minute because my lesson's going to start here at 11. Um, you know, they curtail speech to where this propaganda machine goes. And we've got Sinclair Media. Look all this up so you don't think I'm embellishing or lying to you. Sinclair Media is a uh, giant conglomerate of corporations that owns almost all local media. So when you're watching KTU Channel 2 News in Oregon, the person in, I don't know, Bozeman, Montana, watching there, it'll be some other number, like KLNM News 4 in Montana. It will be damn near, except for some little local touches to put that little culture in there. It'll be the same broadcast, the same exact broadcast. They will finish with the same story. They will use the same script. That's not free speech. And then what happens if we get a newscaster out here that hurts Trump's feelings? Are they gone too? Because if they can do it to a comedian who's supposed to be delivering satire and not the real news, they're definitely going to come after these people for the same reasons. And now we've got an oligarchy, a billionaire class that owns every single news station, starting with Rupert Murdoch in Fox News and Sky News if you're international. CNN, Gary Ellison, another billionaire, he's about to buy CNN. He's going to buy TikTok. CBS and Paramount just had that major merger. So it's very homogenized. It is the only one and only truth is what we're going to be getting. We're very close to like dear leader, no dissent allowed. It's the one and only viewpoint. And so again, that is why free speech is so important. And they're going to start with these bigger voices. But then what's going to happen? Hey, I'm wearing a t-shirt that says fuck ICE on it, or ICE is the Gestapo or something like that, which I don't own that shirt, but I've seen it. Oh, well, now we got to stop you and papers, please. You got to take your shirt off at the airport and that kind of thing. So it's not happening now. I'm not trying to come up with total hyperbole, but what has happened already is quite alarming. It is already here. Like that is something that you wouldn't have tolerated, certainly wouldn't have tolerated in the past, let alone if Biden had done it. If Biden had attacked and removed Fox News anchors, you think that there wouldn't have been any public backlash for that? If he had used the power of the state, the lever of the FCC, and threats from them and the DOJ to pull broadcasting license or kick these people off, and then once you capitulate, oh, it's not enough. Now I want the next guy on your network. That isn't right. It is not right. And it's not even about speech. Brian Kilmeade on Fox News, he was, they do these things where they get riled up and they get outraged because, watch my other video about outrage. It's one thing people need. They want to stoke your outrage, but they need to keep you in it. Because if you maintain your outrage, you don't move on through the natural process of emotions. If I'm only outraged, I cannot move through my anger and arrive at a solution because, I'm back to being outraged. You have to, like, if you're super angry and you're trying to do a task, usually you're going to fail at the task, right? And then you got to, oh man, okay, I got to calm down. Now I go back to the task at hand. Or you're hitting the wall and you're like, God damn it, you're so pissed. And then you have a day, you sleep on it. Now I can come at this from a different perspective. But when your sole emotion is outrage, you don't move through ignorance. You don't move beyond hate, rage, and anger. Those are all normal emotions. Those aren't horrible things. Just like any other emotion, right? You have to be able to move through it. Like empathy. Empathy is a strength. It helps you relate to other people. It can be debilitating if you have too much of it. If you're in tears because you feel you resonate so much with the other person, that's also normal, you know? Families cry of joy when they have a baby, right? We grieve over a love lost. But if you can't move past those tears, you can't get to the next phase. And so they hammer in the outrage, boom, boom, like a drum, so that you maintain it, that you just keep it burning, and then you kind of become addicted to that. It's like the dopamine on social media. I'm outraged. I got to scroll. I'm doom scrolling. I'm outraged again. It's very addictive. Feeds your adrenaline. It also fills you with cortisol, saps your adrenal glands. It's hard on your body too. Um, Brian Kilmeade got people outraged, and he was whipping up a fervor. And sometimes, in their quest to foment this outrage, they go a little too far, right? So he said homeless people, if they won't accept services, should be euthanized, should be murdered, killed. And those words matter. And then in the last 2 days, coincidentally, what have we seen? 2 mass shootings in homeless camps, killing homeless people. Come on. This is the America you want to live in? And is there any consequences for his speech? None so far. None at all that I've seen. If there is, please leave in the comments below, because frankly, I think if you said that at your job, you would lose your job. And frankly, you should lose your job. If I had some staff member here spouting off about how we need to kill people, whoever it is, and it's nonstop, they're out the door, right? To me, that seems like harmful speech, and there should be consequences for it. You're free to say that. You're not going to go to jail for it, right? Unless it's hard to prove that you've incited a violent mob, especially in this country. But there should be consequences when you have a position of authority, when you are a, quote, news anchor, and you use your speech to threaten other people in this country. I do not think that's right. And if you do, please feel free to defend your position, but I don't think it's right. But he could say that because we're supposed to have free speech in this country. And anyway, I've talked too long. I've ranted. We'll see, through analytics who watches this video to the end. But I appreciate you all. I don't think it's political, right? I've said some things today that you might construe as political. That's okay. There are things in the world that are political. Politics affects our very lives, right? As we've seen, we used to think politics was boring, sleepy even, and that the person in the seat didn't really make an impact on our lives. But I hope everybody's pretty awake to seeing that that's just not true. They have a very real impact on our lives. And apolitically, politics aside, we're all supposed to love and hold the Constitution dear, right? The rule of law. These protections for ourselves, if we value the Second Amendment as much as we claim, shouldn't we hold the First and Fourth Amendment equally so? Right? It's not a liberal or a right or a leftist or a MAGA thing. It's the Constitution. The Constitution is not Democrat or Republican. The parties have changed. There's been other parties that have come and gone, but what hasn't changed is that Bill of Rights, right? We can make amendments to it, but by and large, the First Amendment is the same as it was. It's only expanded in its scope since this union was formed. So anyway, I hope we can all agree at least on that bit. And anyway, if anybody's around Portland, Tigard area, if you need a place for community, you'll find it in River City Warriors. We appreciate everybody in our vast community and its diversity and belonging, and it's been amazing for us. I've been able to run this academy for it's going on 20 years here pretty soon, which is wild to say, and I wouldn't change it for anything in the world. Anyway, if you see me out there, and if you see anybody else in the world, be kind to them. Let's show some unity. Let's come together. Let's be friends and neighbors and just good towards one another as best we can. Thank you.